Hello, everyone, and welcome to Guild 21. This is Hart Logan, one of your hosts today. Believe it or not, this is actually our 46th Guild 21 call. As I mentioned, I'm one of your hosts today. I'm very thrilled to be co-hosting with George Avery. Many of you know him well. He did a wonderful job emceeing at the latest symposium, and he's going to kick us off with reading the oath. Welcome, George.
All right, thank you, Hart. I appreciate being a kind of co-host. It was kind of an extension of being the MC at the VeriFacts conference. So when Farzam asked me to continue, that is good for me, and I enjoy being part of it. So I just want a quick reminder for everybody on the oath, and even though everybody I think knows this and feels it, it's always good to hear it. We are repairers, insurers, and vehicle manufacturers who hereby declare the possibility of aligning our industry with a common vision, which puts the customer first or the consumer first. We stand for sweeping innovation. We commit to transparent, customer-focused solutions. We are accountable to invent a radical new future where safety, efficiency, and cost-effective process are our guiding principles. And really, to add on to that, if you were around the conference, Farzam's guideline of fix it right, fix it smart fits into that perfectly. So thanks, Hart.
Yeah, thank you. So we are, I love hearing that oath because it reminds me how important the work is that we do, and that being on this call just reiterates how important it is. So today we're going to be talking about some very, very practical, useful questions. And I'm always reminded, or I always like to remind everyone, that these practical, useful questions have a bigger goal, which is not just to fix cars right, but it's to save lives. Because when these cars are fixed properly and they get in accidents again, because we're human beings, and unfortunately cars get in can get into more than one accident, this call, learning something from this call can literally be saving people's lives. And I'm once again just blown away by the impact that this call potentially has. So that said, let's talk about how the call is going to work. Before I pass it over to George and we introduce the speakers, I wanted to remind you of how the call works. This is interactive. So if you have any question anytime, please press 1 on your phone. If you have a burning question, it cannot wait. You have to speak right now, this instant. Press 2 on your phone. If you're really appreciating what you're hearing, press 5 on your phone. That equals clapping. We do have screen share this week, so you can actually follow the slides along as we go. So to find that, open your original email from Farzam. You probably actually already have it open to get the number to call in, and you will see there is a blue underlined word that says screen share. Click on that, and it will bring you to our online screen share page. We are going to be doing some polling, so there might be some moments when we ask the question, and you'll hear me chime in saying press 1 on your phone if A, and we really hope you participate in that because we find it incredibly helpful to hear your input. So that said, George, would you like to introduce our topic today?
Yes, I would. We're going to talk about repair versus replace, but what I'd first like to do is move this page 2 and just do our antitrust. And it's important, I think, we haven't done those a lot in the past, but I think it's important to read the antitrust. Did that slide advance? I was just pulling, there it goes. So let me just read that to you because, again, if you work for some companies, if you were ever asked, was the antitrust read, and now you can say yes. No participant shall be allowed to discuss any subject relating to prices charged, discounts offered of any nature, specific hourly rates, employee benefits, or agreements made with third-party entities. Should any discussion of these items take place, said participant will be asked to refrain immediately, disregarding any pursuant discussion, and should said party deny such a request, this meeting will be immediately disbanded. I know we have all seen that before and we know how to operate, but it's always good to be able to say we did that. We're going to talk about repair versus replace, so I'm going to move forward, and this is kind of some comments that I would like to talk about. And so up in the corner, you'll see the guy, the Guild 21, and then there's a little stick figure that kind of represents George and his mustache. The only difference between that characterization and me is that mustache is a heck of a lot blacker than my gray mustache, and he frankly probably has more hair as well. But the point is, I'd like to talk about a couple things, and one of them is critical thinking. So on page 4 is critical thinking. And I bring up critical thinking because when we get into repair versus replace, we have a lot of options. Obviously, there's some, well, I'll go through each one of them, but, you know, the little picture in the bottom has 5 question marks, which basically represents probably the 5 decision points that you can make. And it all depends on critical thinking. And frankly, I'm wondering if either it's through just repetition or it's just habit, but sometimes our critical thinking doesn't work very well. Now, if you're going Mach 15 with your hair on fire, it's a little hard to sit down and think things through, and that's why we have processes and procedures. But for the most part, critical thinking is important. So let's go to the next slide, slide 5, and just talk about when it comes to the auto body, for the most part, really there's 5 things, and this is probably the order you should think about them when you're looking at damage on a car. So the key thing is to find the damage, right? And what I don't like, and nothing against our mechanical brethren, but I'm not, you know, I don't like on my personal cars to replace parts until the problem goes away. I'd like you to follow the steps so I don't end up paying $387 to have an injector put in and find out later it was a spark plug. Not that I'm complaining or I'm talking about anything specific, but that is something that bothers me. Well, on the auto body side, really there's 5 steps, and we all know it, right? Appearance, and I'm not talking about appearance allowance. I don't even talk about prices or whether that's appropriate. What I'm talking about is when you find damage and there's a scrape or a little, you know, a mark on a transmission case that doesn't affect anything. You know, I think GM has does GM have that plastic gas tank now? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you look at the bottom of it, it's got some marks on it. And so if any, you know, there are times that things get damaged and there's just an appearance issue. Now, I'm not going to talk about what the claim settlement process is. I'm just saying that there's times where it doesn't affect the part and it doesn't need to be repaired or replaced. This next step is repair. And obviously, you want to repair, look for repair options first. And if it's not repairable, move to recycled. And then if recycled's not the best bet, it's not during your critical thinking, everybody knows aftermarket might be the next opportunity, and then OEM. What we find is sometimes it's reversed. We replace everything first. Now, I'll give you a good example. I used to ride bicycles a lot, and I was riding a little fast in my neighborhood, and I come whipping around the corner, and a parked car pulled right out in front of me, and I ended up running into the rear of it and broke the tail lamp. So I went up to the door and, you know, Frank a little embarrassed and said, hey, I just want to let you know I broke the, you know, tail lamp on this car parked on the curb. And she said, that's no problem. That's my husband. He's the attorney for the local body shop in town. So I don't think it's a problem at all. You just need to go talk to the body shop. So I was immediately, you know, terrified. But it's amazing when I was faced with paying it, you know, my first one was, you know, can you repair it? Can we And, of course, the body shop looked at me and went, no. And then the next one was, you know, can we get a recycle one? I know it's your attorney, and I know, man, you know, what are we going to do? It's a very expensive tail lamp. And the shop said, well, actually, on this one, there's no connectivity. You know, like in the newer, it was an older car. And he said, I don't see any problem with a recycle. I got a good recycler, and I think I can find you one. And I went, let's do that. So it turns out the recycled was the best bet. But it's just amazing how we initially do one of 2 things. We're scared to death of what the cost is going to be, so we kind of go through it step by step, trying to find every opportunity before we have to replace it with new. And, of course, by the time you get there, if new's the best bet, you're comfortable with it and there's nothing else you can do. And then the other problem I personally have is sometimes I don't have time to mess with it, so just replace it. Yeah, but it could be just replace it. Oh, wait a minute. It could just be something. No, I'll just get another one. So that's something I think it happens. So what I'd like to do, advance to the next slide, is I'd like to just focus on repair. And when you talk about repair and all these steps I just said, remember that repair procedures kind of are the umbrella. You know, all this is under the umbrella of repair procedures, right? So everybody knows something might appear to be repairable, but you might find out that a repair procedure says you can't. So I'm just saying you go through those 5 steps, but obviously keep repair procedures in the back of your mind. If you go to the next slide, I just circled repair because that's going to be our focus today. And we're just going to talk about repair versus replace. Now, I'm going to break it up. Farzan would like to break this up into two pieces, right? So we're going to today, if you go to the next slide, this April call, we're going to talk about bumper repairs and interior parts. And when you see plastic bumper repair and interior part repair, please put your mind in neutral for a second. It's not a sales pitch, and I'm not going to browbeat you that you should be repairing stuff and try to convince you. I just want to share some things with you, and I've got a couple guests here that are going to help me do that. We're at CIC this week. In fact, yesterday, Toby Chess and Kai went through some bumper repair stuff. And, we haven't seen bumper repair demonstrations at CIC for many years, but Toby did a great job talking about the benefits of repair and what you can and can't do. So we're going to do plastic bumper repair and talk about interior parts today. We've got two great guests that we're going to introduce in just a moment. And then in May, we're going to do outer panels and paintless dent repair. And I'd like you to make a note to see that one because I think replacing panels, we quickly replace panels sometimes. And again, repair procedures are our guidelines. However, there are some options out there, and it could be in the best interest. And again, if you think of the mantra of fix it right, fix it smart, repair certainly has a place. Let's go to the next page, and I'm going to have them issue a question here. So if you could have them answer this question, and the question is: repair versus replace improves performance metrics, and they have an opportunity, obviously, to strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree.
All right. So repair. So could you rephrase the question, George? Because I'm not sure what are people strongly agreeing with?
Well, the statement is that repair versus replace. In other words, if I choose to...
asking the question of repair versus replace, does that improve performance metrics?
Right. Does repair versus replace improve? Should have taken the F. Well, S is all right. Improves the performance metrics. So what we're really asking the group is do you really think going through all this repair versus replace has an impact on performance metrics? And I'd just like to know what the group thinks about that.
Yeah, so if you agree with that having this conversation today is actually going to improve the performance metrics, press 1 if you strongly agree, 2 if you agree, 3 if you're totally neutral, 4 if you disagree, or 5 if you strongly disagree. And we have a lot of people who have not raised their hands yet, so please raise your hand. 1 if you strongly agree, 2 if you agree, 3 if you're neutral, 4 if you disagree, and 5 if you really strongly disagree that this is not going to change performance matrix at all.
Just to be clear, they're pressing that on their telephone keypad, right?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
That's right. On your phone, press 1 if you strongly agree, 2 if you agree, 3 if you're neutral, 4 if you disagree, 5 if you strongly disagree. We don't have everyone's hands up, although we have enough. So about 52% strongly agree. About 26% agree. So we're really looking at over 75% consider this pretty important. Interestingly, about 17% are neutral on this topic. It'd be interesting to see how they feel at the end of the conversation. And finally, we just have a few, but about 4% strongly disagree that this is going to improve performance metrics. So you have a couple people you need to convert, George.
Oh, no, that's fine. I don't know if I have to convert them because they might think that, hey, if a repair procedure says to do something, repair is moot, so it doesn't. So I can see where they're coming from. So I don't have a problem with that. But it looks like a lot of folks feel like repair is an option. I'm going to go to the next slide, slide 10, and just when it comes to doing repair versus replace, obviously there's the estimating piece. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Some of the challenges associated with estimating, some of the challenges are the issues with tools, with technicians, whether you sublet, and then some business decisions that some of us make. And that's just, each one of those things could be a call, right? So we're just going to breeze through a few of them. But I just like to go to page 10, and I'm going to, it's a question for the group, so I'm going to issue one more question to the group on slide 11, and just ask the group, Hart, I've got one more when it comes up here, challenges to estimating repair versus replace. So what I've heard a lot is that some of our estimators don't figure repair for a variety of reasons. And it shows here that one of them could be that they're new to the job. And we have a lot of new estimators out there that are not as familiar with some of the repair techniques. There could be some performance goals that stop, frankly, people from figuring repair. Maybe, I don't know, some are compensated in a way that, repair is not as conducive, perhaps, or desirable. I don't know. A bad past experience. I can tell you that most of the things I do, and when I was an estimator, or the things I didn't do, was because of a bad past experience. Now, that bad experience may have happened 5 years ago, but by golly, it's never going to happen to me again. I'm never going to try to repair something again, or tools and technicians. So this is just a quick question for the group. When it comes to challenges as it relates to the estimators or estimating repair versus replace, does any of those stand out more than others as to whether, what the challenges are to getting more repair on the estimate? So I'd just like to ask the group that, Hart.
Yeah, so just to rephrase it, so the question is really, of these four things, does one of them stand out as being the largest challenge to estimating if you should repair or replace? So option 1, press 1 on your phone if you think the biggest challenge is being new to the job. Press 2 if you think the biggest challenge is performance goals. Press 3 on your phone if you think the biggest challenge is bad past experience. And press 4 on your phone if you think the biggest challenge is the tools and technicians. So again, what makes it of these four, what stands out to you as being the most challenging to figure out if you should repair or replace? 1, new to the job. Press 2 on your phone if it's performance goals. Press 3 on your phone if it's a bad past experience, or 4 on your phone if it's the tools and technicians. And I'm going to say if you actually don't think it matters, hit 5 on your phone. We're asking which is the most important, and we don't have all the hands up. So I'm just wondering if you have no opinion, why don't you go ahead and press 5 on your phone so that we can see, so we can make sure everybody here is participating, which is it's not necessarily one of these things or all these challenges are equal. Press 5 on your phone.
Yeah,
so the results.
I'm glad you did that because it's a hard one to answer, so I just threw it out there.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the results are still coming in. This is your last moment to sign in, and we have the results are in. It's interesting. They're pretty mixed, although we do have a clear winner. About 15% think that being new to the job is the biggest challenge. About 20% think it's performance goals. A little over 20% think it's bad past experience. So 2 and 3 are pretty much tied, but the clear winner is 4. About 30% said it's tools and technicians. Good. And this sort of as a heads up, the remaining 15% were either neutral or thought it could be all of them.
All right, thank you. Good. All right, good, very good. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to do that. So let's just move forward real quick, go on to page 12. I'm not going to ask the group this question, but I just wanted to just plant this seed because it'll be one of the things to consider on this call as well as the call in May, and that are all operations considered when estimating repair versus replace. And of course, if I'm not going to issue the question part, but it's either yes sometimes or no. And what I'm talking about is a lot of times we jump to replace, not to realize that maybe there's some extra steps with blending or a few other things that we don't consider in the overall cost, where we might find that repair is a better bet, even though at first blush it didn't seem that way. So let's go to page 12, or page 13, I'm sorry. So that was just the end of my little, for lack of a better word, rant about critical thinking. And the whole idea is that critical thinking process is just something we need to do. And I think a lot of us do it. I'm not saying that we all are struggling with this, but it is a good reminder to have some critical thinking. So with that, we have some special guests with us, and Hart's going to introduce our special guests that are going to cover both bumper repair and interior repair. So who are our guests today, Hart?
Yeah, we have Kurt Lamon, who has actually been here about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and Scott McKiernan. So Kurt is president of Polyvance. He's been president of Polyvance since 1995 when he and his brother Keith took over from the founder. They provide plastic repair and refinishing products to the collision repair industry. Prior to that, Kurt spent 5 years as a project engineer at Honeywell's Aerospace and Defense Division and graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA from Carnegie Mellon. He lives in Chattanooga, Tennessee with his wife and daughters. And we were chatting before the call, and back in high school, Kurt actually ran a marathon. And while he's still a runner, he has vowed to never, ever run a marathon again, because why the heck would he want to do that to himself? That said, he's still really athletic and enjoys mountain biking, hiking, and just enjoying finally some decent weather in Chattanooga, because apparently it's been a pretty rough spring. We also have Scott McKiernan. He's the president of Number One Vinyl and Leather Repair. He's been in the collision claim industry for over 30 years, which developed an go ahead. Did you want to add something, George?
No, I think there's a little noise on the line every now and then.
Okay. So Scott's been in the industry for over 30 years, and he has a history in repairing interior trim and textiles. With his deep understanding of KPI metrics, Scott developed TrimQuote, a quick response system for industry constituents in making major repair versus replace decisions. The really cool thing about Scott is instead of just a regular sort of body shop or tool shop in high school, they had a plastic shop. So in 7th grade, he started doing plastic fabrication, having fun doing things like building surfboards. And he absolutely loved it and did it all through high school. And lo and behold, 2 years out of high school, ended up working in plastic, vinyl, and leather repair. And as a result, because it's always been so much fun for him, he feels like he's never worked a day in his life. So that said, welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
We're
Thank you.
Very happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with you, Scott, but before we start, Scott, I'm just going to ask a couple quick questions to the group. So if we go to page 15, just as a point of reference, how many of you own or have a nitrogen plastic welder? And the reason I'm asking that is because at CIC yesterday, Toby talked about them, the different ones, and was talking about the history of them. And I was really interested. We didn't ask the group here at CIC, but I'd like to ask you. So, Art, could we just ask them, do they have a nitrogen welder, yes or no?
Yeah. So, do you have a nitrogen welder, yes or no? Press 1 if you have a nitrogen welder, and press 2 if you do not. So the results are coming in. Keep them coming. If you have a nitrogen welder, press 1 on your phone. If you do not have a nitrogen plastic welder, press 2 on your phone. And I know this question doesn't necessarily apply to everyone on the call, because we also have insurers and OEMs as well as body shops. But if you have a body shop, press 1 if you have a nitrogen plastic welder, and press 2 if you do not. So the results are in, and only about 30% have the plastic welder. Over 70% do not.
That's fine. And like you said, we have a lot of folks on the line. In fact, that's one of the great things about this call is it's all three. We've got repairers, insurers, OEMs, and suppliers. So that is tough to answer that question, but we're just curious. I'm going to go ahead and skip to page 17. We're going to skip 16, and we're going to go to 17. And what I'm going to do, just one last quick question, Hart, for the group is who performs interior or plastic repairs in your repair facility? And again, I know that we've got a lot of people online, but one of the questions that's come up is it something that the A-Tech has to do because it's technical work that an A-Tech, or is it something that a B-Tech does? It's something that doesn't quite require that much expertise. Or do you have a specialist? We have someone that does our interior or plastic repairs, and you may not do interior repairs, but either one. I just like to know either or we don't do. We don't do repairs. We sublet everything out. But I've been asked this question several times, and I know we're not going to get a solid number, but I would just like a feel for when it comes to doing repairs, when you're keeping it in-house, is that an A-Tech thing, a B-Tech thing, a specialist, or you just sublet everything out?
Yeah. So per George's question, press 1 on your phone if it's an A-Tech making the plastic or interior repairs. Press 2 on your phone if it's the B-Tech. Press 3 on your phone if it's a specialist. Press 4 if you don't do the repairs. So 1 for A-Tech, 2 for B-Tech, 3 for specialist, and 4 if you don't do repairs. So results are coming in. Please keep them coming. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we don't have a lot of hands up. So perhaps if this question does not apply to you, press 5 on your phone. So press 1 if you have an A-Tech perform interior plastic repairs. Press 2 if you have a B-Tech do it. Press 3 if you have a specialist do it. Press 4 if you don't do repairs. And press 5 if this question really is not necessarily directly relevant to you, just so we can make sure you're still paying attention. All right, so I'm actually just going to report the first 4 because we have about 15% that this isn't necessarily relevant to. But of the people this question is relevant to, about 25% have the A-Tech make the repairs. About 12% have the B-Tech do the repairs. About 30% have the specialist do repairs. And about 35%, the highest number, don't do repairs.
Okay. All right. So I appreciate that. All right, let's get on to Scott. I'd like me start with you first. You obviously do interior repairs. Let's move to page 18. And, of course, what can be repaired. So what we're going to do, Scott provided me a couple photos, and I know what you're thinking. We're going to grind through, can this be repaired? Can this be repaired? We're not going to do that. I had a couple, though, I do want to ask you about because I think it's significant. But if you go to 19, obviously interior repairs includes dashes, and where in this case, this is when Scott, a tree came in through the windshield?
Yeah, correct. It came through the windshield, and the windshield laid on top of the dash.
So if you go to 20, you can see obviously it can be repaired. Now, Scott, when you do these repairs on dashes, now when you say dash to me, first thing I think about is airbags. I think about safety issues. So, when you're into repairing dashes, do you have guidelines as it relates to staying away from parts that have airbags?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We've run into times where a dash is damaged, and they say it's not repairable because it has an airbag in it. This is a perfect case where I'm not aware of any vehicle that has an airbag on top of the speedometer housing, but a basic guideline is anywhere where it may deploy and change the weak deployment point of where an airbag would explode or open. I've had insurers actually say, it can't be anywhere within 6 inches of an airbag opening. And, typically we're talking about a passenger side airbag. In a lot of cases, the dash is such that you can't tell where the airbag deploys, in which case we really broaden the area that it even may deploy. If there's anything in question, we absolutely don't do it because we don't want to be responsible for a poor deployment or a misfire on an airbag.
Right. So as you look if you decide to sublet repairs on interior, that's obviously you want to look for that kind of attitude, I guess, in your supplier. Let's advance to 21 or 22. 22 is a leather seat. There's a problem with leather. Stay with the picture. I'm not going to ask the question, but I am going to ask Scott. So there's a little. The seat has got some problems. I don't know what caused that, but if you go to number 23, if you skip to 23, Barry, we're not going to ask the question. We're just going to go and see the repair. So if you just 24, I'm sorry, 24 shows it repaired. So Scott, when obviously looks like a great repair. It's a great option. I think that's great. But here we go with safety again. We've got airbags that deploy out of the side. There's stitching issues. Give us some comments about that, because we got everybody on the call here, and I know that thread is an issue, and repairing where the airbag goes out is an issue. Could you shore us up on that?
Yeah, there's 2 points really. You know, this picture is of a seat with perforations in it. A lot of seats like that are on higher end vehicles, and they have heated seats or, you know, even air conditioned seats. So we take into consideration if it's a cut all the way through leather, and much like a perforation on a leather or a letter or an envelope, if it's through several of these, we usually opt for a non-repair and give the repairer reject slips and really spelling out why it can't be, because it's a passenger side seat, it gets a great deal of wear, and we don't believe that this would hold up for the life of the vehicle. The second point is on the stitching and airbag that you mentioned. Some seats have side airbags in the seat back, and I've even seen seats that have a side airbag on the bottom of the seat. Again, those are non-repairable parts only because on stuff like that on the side of the seat or even the bottom of the seat, there is special thread, special breakaway thread. You can't have that thing reupholstered at a normal body shop because they don't use that type of thread. It has to be a special breakaway thread that breaks at a certain point when that airbag deploys. And, you know, if anything like stitching is damaged, it needs a new cover.
All right, so
go ahead.
That's fine. So go to page 20. Go to the 25th page there, slide 25, Barry, for me. So what you're talking about, obviously, we showed you some photos. The reject slip. Now you mentioned the reject slip. Now I know in the bumper world early on that was kind of a big deal. I remember that. You know, you can't replace a bumper without a reject slip, and you would go get a reject slip. And you just mentioned that on interior. So do you see a lot of, and I know you're regional, but do you see that as a good option for regional providers to, and maybe, you know, I don't want to start anything here, but I do think that there's an opportunity to request reject slips to just make sure that somebody maybe went through the critical thinking. So are those working for you, or explain how that works?
Well, reject slip, if you're a repairer, there's you know, like you had mentioned, bumpers a lot of times used to get reject slips and even still do today. What reject slips accomplishes is actually training maybe an untrained estimator or somebody new to the industry. I know our numbers were real big of somebody that was new to the industry or and so on. There's several insurers that have implemented a reject slip system. And it was problematic at first because you had to drive out there and take a look, and it slowed down the process. And so that process could be expedited, at least in my region. I'm sure other people could do the exact same thing, where an estimator, as he's looking at the vehicle, can snap a picture and ask somebody if it's repairable. Literally, before they get back to their desk to write the estimate, they know whether it's repairable or not, and they can take that text or that email that whatever they send out on, and attach it to the file so that the insurers know that they at least attempted looking at repair.
And all that's done pretty quick over a text?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows how fast a text message works. Snap a picture and forward it. If, you know, and again, in my region, if we're a contact on your phone, we get a picture in 30 seconds. And, you know, we guarantee that they have an answer back in just a couple minutes, you know, within 5 minutes. So that, as I said, while they're still looking at the car, a lot of times they get the answer whether it's repairable or not. So by the time they go to sit down at their desk to write this estimate, they can actually have, you know, an educated answer on whether something's repairable or not. Again, newer insurers have no idea because it's not really part of the training to repair interior parts, where a 1-inch scratch on a fender is, you know, a paint repair. A 1-inch scratch on a door panel, it needs a new panel because they just have no idea. We run into it a lot that people just have no idea that this stuff can be repaired. Even at shops that have been around for a long time. It depends on the training of the estimator.
Right. So what now? There's got to be a time. I mean, do you have cases where you go out there though? I mean, is there any
Absolutely.
value?
Sometimes the picture is not conclusive, or we really want to take a second look. You know, there's hundreds of different textures and scenarios where it may take a professional to go on site and take a look. Typically, that happens less than 10% of the time. 90% of the time, we can give an immediate response on whether something's repairable or not.
Now, yesterday, we were talking yesterday, and was it yesterday you looked at that one that you kind of got?
Yeah, yesterday we got one in on a 2017 Range Rover where it looked like a pretty big abrasion. I mean, it was a 6-inch abrasion on a almost new car, and they said, "Is this repairable?" And we said, "Well, we believe so, but we're going to be right out." We got out a couple hours later, took a look at it. My guy was able to repair it. And thankful the shop was real thankful because it was a really minor damage. It was a straight-on door hit. There was no pillar or rocker damage, and it just kind of squashed the door panel a little bit. And it was 3 weeks to get this Land Rover part. And instead of, the car's going to go tomorrow. We got the call yesterday. Things repaired, and the car's going to be gone this week. And it was, just a few-day repair rather than the car sitting there done waiting for a door panel.
Now, at the same time, and we don't have to go into it, but it seems to me that there's safety issues here too. There are times where those side panels, have crush zones or whatever they have, that honeycomb deal. So I just want to just throw out there that regardless of what you're looking at, safety is an issue. Now, you also, the other thing I hear out there is, and of course, as a have been a technician a long time ago, I've scarred up and made mistakes and accidentally scratched some interior myself. And, back to critical thinking, first thing I want to know is if it can get repaired. So I'm sure that happens. Does that happen out there where you get called out and repairs, because, man, I'll tell you what, it gets complicated and a lot of things are going a lot of different directions. Do you ever see cases where stuff is related to the loss and it gets scratched in the repair process? Yeah. Those are opportunities too, right? Aren't those opportunities to
Absolutely. Repair? Thursdays are our busiest day of the week, always. That's usually the reassembly process that they're trying to get this car out by Friday. And I mean, something gets scratched, nicked, cracked, whatever in the reassembly process. And I think, repairing it is the first option because, at that point, it's costly to the repairer just to buy, let's say in the case of this Land Rover, if that would have been shop damage rather than, a collision damage, they don't want to pay $1,800 for a door panel. They'd much rather opt for a repair option, which is 80% less.
All right. Well, the only last thing is that I'm, if shops don't do it in-house, because there's a lot of benefit of doing repairs in-house, and when you sublet, I know there's some issues that come up with, replacing a part. Sometimes, it's more profitable to replace a part than repair it. But I guess the focus is if you fix it right and fix it smart, you need to do what's right for the car. Well, I appreciate it, Scott. I'm going to move on to Kurt real quick. And if I missed anything, was there anything I missed that you thought I was going to ask you? But if not, I'm going to move on to Kurt real quick. I appreciate it.
Maybe just on your third point here, about texture and glass. There's hundreds of different textures on interior trim panels. And we, a lot of times, get called out to repair something that their technician damaged and then tried to repair because, I don't know, for a myriad of reasons, he didn't want this thing to be damaged in the, reassembly process. And they're just not trained to actually match the texture and the color. It takes, hundreds and hundreds of hours of training somebody to match the texture so that it's not visible. And other than that, the other side here is glass damage. Over 90% of glass damage.
Wait a second, Scott. Repairable. When you say glass damage, you're not talking about damaged glass. You're talking about glass that breaks and then,
correct,
tears up the interior when it comes in.
Well,
right?
Yeah, kind of in the case of both of those slides you had were glass damage. That dash was glass from a windshield that laid onto it, but a right side window gets popped, and you'll have little nicks on the driver's upper seat, the driver's lower seat where somebody sat on the glass or scratched it, vacuuming it up, maybe the corner of the right side of the dash. I've seen cases where a back window got blown out, and 4 seats, console, and dash all had little glass nicks. And like I said, in over 90% of the cases, minor glass damage like that is repairable.
All right, good. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. And
thank you.
I know you're a regional guy, and there's a lot of repairers like you out there. And I know that from a nationwide call, that they just need to search out and find an interior repair. But I thought that was some good information. I appreciate it, Scott. So Kurt's with us. Talk about bumper repair. If you go to page 26, and I'm just going to rattle through a couple things. I'm not going to put you through some questions, but Kurt, welcome, and I'm glad to have you. Been around for a long time, and I know that even back in the day of when I was in State Farm and I was an instructor, we used to do a little bit of bumper repair with a little hot iron and stuff. Yeah. And so, the one thing I always loved when I was showing a person how to do a little bumper repair, I'd always get that one guy that says, "Well, it looks repaired right now, but if it gets hit there again, it'll break." And that's when I said, "Well, that's what happened the first time." So, you know, what the hell's wrong with you? I can't make it bulletproof. I'm just telling you, the first time it got hit there, it broke. You know, if it gets hit there again, it's probably going to break. That's the way it is. But we're going to talk about that and a couple components about maybe backing up the repair when it comes to some of these repairs. If you go to 27, you know, I'll just show you a couple pictures. You've seen a million pictures like this. Toby did a great job at CIC showing some tools that were available and how to fix tabs and so on. And we've all heard that. If you go to page 28, obviously you can see that it's repaired. And so we can skip over 20, go to 29 there. We're not going to ask the question. So go to 30, there it is, repaired on page 30. And then, so everybody's seen these pictures. If you go to 31, the next one, you know, here's some more, you know, damage to the bumper. It's pushed in pretty hard at the bottom. There's a crack at the top. Page 30, go to 32. Wow, it's repaired. Toby talked about not only can you use a heat gun, you could use the
IR light.
The infrared light heats up a larger area quicker than trying to go around in circles a lot. So that's an option that obviously was for doing Bondo and paint and primer, right?
Right.
And now all of a sudden you can do it on bumpers. 33, here's one. Is this repairable? Hell yeah, it's repairable. It'd take a month, but you probably could. So if you want to repair this, you probably need psychological counseling because it doesn't make sense. I don't know if that was appropriate or not, but it did come out. But the point is that from a critical thinking standpoint, you know, can you repair that? I know I can pretty much repair anything, but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense from a cycle time. It's just not economically, it's not the thing to do. I do have a question for you. If you go to 34, let me ask you this question, and this will be a participant heart. If you could just, and I know there's not a lot of participation. I'm a little nervous about that because I hope that there's more than 5 people on the call, but at the same time, here is some damage on a bumper, and let's ask them. If you go to page 35, is that bumper repairable? So we'll put the question up, repair versus replace, 1 to repair it, 2 to replace. And while you're walking them through that, Hart, I'm going to have advance the slide to 36 so they can look at it again to make a decision on what they want to do.
So if you think you can repair this, press 1. If you think you should replace it, press 2. And even if you're not in a body shop, take a guess. If you think you can repair it, press 1. Replace, press 2. So we don't have a ton of hands up. Keep them coming. The results are coming in. So
yeah, George, this is Barry. I'm just curious if you could tell us can you give us an idea without giving it away? Like, what is the material so we know whether we could repair or replace?
Well, Kurt, it's...
Oh, yeah, that is a plastic bumper, polypropylene bumper. There's a couple of cracks. You can see one, the hand is there to push it enough so you can actually see the crack that's running vertically, and then there's another one above that that's kind of horizontal. But that is like on the side of a bumper near the wheel well, and the top edge you see there is where you would snap it into the bracket on the quarter panel.
Okay, I think that will help for our participants to get a better idea in order to vote. Thank you for the clarification.
So again, press 1 if you think you can repair it, and 2 if you think you can replace it. Don't know if that knowledge changes your answer. Press 1 on your phone if you can repair it. Press 2 if you can replace it. And the results are in, and almost 70% think that we can repair it, and about 30% want to replace it.
All right, Kurt. So I got to tell you, when I looked at that based on seeing those previous ones, and this is part of critical thinking, but from the information I have, I would think I could repair it. So what's the answer?
Well, if that was just a piece of plastic, yes, you could repair it. But what we didn't tell you is
Sensor behind it.
there's a sensor behind it. And one of the lessons we want to impart here is that everyone needs to look up the OEM procedures, especially with the newer vehicles with the collision warning devices and blind spot monitors. Very important to follow the OEM procedures first. And if the repair is not, how should I say this, not
within the guidelines, right? Because you could have a repair as long as the material thickness is accurate, or you could have a procedure that says no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's fairly new. I know that Nissan has a regulation or procedure says that if it's within a certain distance or a radius around a monitor behind the bumper, that it cannot be repaired in that area. Not only just repair, but also I think it's so sensitive to paint thickness as well. So that has to be followed first. That's the first step is to research that. And then if a repair seems to be a good option, then we would follow George's steps there, the 5-step procedure.
So how much of that is ruining your life?
Well, there's tons of opportunity for plastics on cars, not just bumpers, but headlight tabs, trim items. So I think there's
washer bottles, stuff like that.
Yeah, washer bottles is a great point. Most of the plastic parts on a vehicle are not structural. In fact, very few are structural. So you can repair these things without any risk of it affecting the energy absorption of the car. The bumper fascia, for example, or just a cosmetic part. The overflow bottle, as you mentioned, most of those that you can just see the filler neck, but down below the tank body itself, if it got pierced in an accident, you could easily weld that up. It's not cosmetic, it's not visible to the consumer, and as long as it's a strong and durable repair, that's perfectly functional repair.
So then what about, you got fuse boxes and those. Now, does plastic type slow you down anymore? I mean, just to date myself, I remember the days where you're supposed to cut a sliver of the plastic and light it on fire and find out what kind of smoke it had.
That is, back in the old days, that was what they did a lot of times, but that was when you're trying to figure out if it's mainly polypropylene or urethane. Now urethane bumpers are pretty much gone. There are a few examples out there, but for the most part, your bumper covers are polypropylene. Many of the underhood parts are polypropylene, and in most cases, it is pretty easy to find the ID on the part somewhere so you can identify that.
Cool. All right, I got one more little piece, and then we'll open up for questions for both Scott and Kurt. If we could go to 37, I want to show you this, and when I show it to you, you think I'm going to browbeat you, and I'm not. I just want to bring up 2 points here. This is a Ferrari. The bumper on this car is $9,372, 8 hours to put it on. Fender's $6,800. If you go to page 38, a couple close-ups of the bumper, and then of the fender. So back up one slide to 37, if you would. So here's my thing. So I'm just my last little piece, and we'll open it up to questions. There's 2 components that I just want to visit about, and that is, we have situations where you look at a repair and you can almost, this whole thing about you can repair anything if you have enough time. But I've had situations where, well, you repair this for 8 hours. No. Well, my critical thinking, I'm looking at my options. I have a $9,372 part. Would you fix it for 15 hours? Now, I shouldn't throw hours out there because I don't want this antitrust issues. All I'm trying to do is make the point that critical thinking may put you in a position where you have more time to spend for repair. Now, coming from the insurance side, I can tell you that you bristle sometimes when you see 15 hours on an estimate. And again, I feel bad saying 15, but I'm just trying to make the point of a high figure that's on there. And so those are things to consider. I'm going to have advance the slide to 38 real quick, and then 39. You just take a peek at this damage. and on 40, there's the fender. You can see some tabs are pulled out. So I'm not saying, if you just go to 41, all I want to do is throw two things out. I'm not asking this question, Hart. I just want to just do the what if. What if you had some critical thinking and thought about what is the best way and the smartest way, would we consider having some discussion between those involved in the process as to whether that's something that we might consider repair. Which brings me to my last little piece, and that is one of the problems I see out there is that you do a repair and then you got to live with it, right? Like Scott said, is it a repair that can last the life of the car? And sometimes, this is George Avery's opinion, is that you end up putting the shop in an awkward position because, if something ever happened where, it's cold, you're up in the northern, it's freezing, if something gets a little brittle, you bump it, it cracks again, then the customer comes back and is upset with the repair, and the insurance company says, well, if you'd have repaired it right, maybe that wouldn't have happened, and we know that's not the case. So the question is, what if the parties were to cover each other, and I'm just throwing this out, where an insurance company perhaps might say, you know what, can you repair it? Yeah, I can repair it, and I can repair it correctly, but I don't want this every once in a while. I do a lot of repairs. You have one get away, something happens that's unusual, and the question is there any value in backing up a shop? And I'm just throwing it out there, just if it's just an issue of, hey, if it does, I'll buy a new bumper for it. Don't worry about it. Now, I don't know what kind of uncomfortableness is going through the audience right now, and frankly, I don't care because I'm not buying or selling. All I'm throwing out there is that when you consider repair, use critical thinking to determine all the options and expenses and make sense of what's the best thing to do. And second of all, hey, can we partner together on this? Because I think it's in the best interest to repair this car. I want to repair this part. It helps with the paint. It keeps the original part on the car. It is more efficient for me to do it. I think it's in the best interest of everybody, but if there's a problem in the future, we need to, can you back me up on this? So I'm not looking for any questions about that, and I don't think I'm in trouble bringing it up, but I do think it's something that we should think about. I've seen areas where that attitude is taken, and there was less reluctance to do repair, knowing that every once in a while, if something doesn't hold or some weird thing happens, you're back talking to the same people about repair and not talking about quality of repair. Now, a couple in your eyes, and a couple of you are going, George, you only been out of the business 2 years, and you're starting to talk like that? What the hell's wrong with you? So with that, I'm just planting that seed, and obviously no question to be asked, Hart. But I will advance to 42, and it will just open it up for questions. So, Hart, is there anything I missed or anything? I want to talk about AMI, but before, go to 43. Is that the question slide? No, 44 maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it in the wrong spot there. So from our special guests, I first want to thank Kurt and Scott for taking time out of their busy day to share some things with us. Any questions for Kurt and Scott?
Yeah, if you have a question, please press 1 on your phone. This is a unique opportunity. We have 2 real experts here. So if you have any questions for Kurt or Scott, or Kurt and Scott, please press 1 on your phone. If you have a question, please press 1 on your phone. So while we're waiting for the last question, I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm a consumer, right? I come to it from a consumer perspective. If I had a fender bender and I come in, what am I hoping for? Am I hoping for a repair, or am I hoping for a replace? Like, as the customer, what do customers tend to be looking for?
Well, having 37 years on the insurance side, I think everybody wants everything replaced, but at the same time, they want their car back quickly. But I think overall, this is my answer. I think what I believe is that the repairers, I think the insurer the customer believes the insurer. They trust their insurer, but they really trust the body shop. And I think if the repairer were to say, and I'd ask you how you'd feel as a consumer if you're looking, you're handing your keys to someone that's going to fix your car and say, hey, they're going to repair this thing. Is that okay? And if the shop's voice doesn't crack and say, yeah, it'll be fine, what we're talking about is a repair facility goes, yeah, I can repair that. It's no problem. We do it every day. Don't worry. So when you say hope, I think a lot of people don't know enough, but they trust their repair.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, as a consumer, is there more? So one reason to hope for a repair versus a replace is speed. I'm wondering if there's other ways as a consumer you can convince me besides just trust that that's a preferable option.
It depends how far down the road I can get you to look, because theoretically, if the cost of repairs is lower, that does have an impact on your premiums overall. But some people don't want to think that far ahead, but that does help if you can get cars fixed. And for its turnover for the repair facility, get that car out, get another one in.
I was going to say the incidence of total losses now have been going up. In CIC meeting today, they said it's almost 19%. So if some repair options will keep it underneath that threshold, that could benefit the shop. Obviously they're not making any money on total losses. So and it'll also reduce premiums in the long run.
You see that as well, Scott, don't you? I mean, you told me about one where there was over $30,000 worth of savings or something on repair versus.
Yeah, there's been several cases where I mentioned glass damage, where it damaged a lot of the panels on the car. We went out on an estimate last week on a Mercedes SUV, the big flagship SUV for Mercedes, and there was glass damage on 16 panels. It was everywhere. And, the estimate for replacing this trim was just over $40,000. We went out there and told them it was repairable, and it was almost 90% savings. The car didn't total because of it. And that's not to mention the other damage to the vehicle. I'm talking, that was just the interior trim. And I'm glad you brought up the point of premiums. Most customers don't think down the road that if we keep premiums, or repairs low, the premiums stay lower. I know claims have gone up and up and up every year, kind of like what Kurt mentioned, 19% totals, which is way up. And, the insurers want to keep the claims low. The body shops want to do as much work as they can, to do the job right. And the insurer just wants their car back in an expedited fashion, so reducing cycle time on these things by repairing versus replace helps the insurer, because they're just inconvenienced for sometimes weeks less.
Well, but I also want to hear that it's a safer choice, right? I would like to hear, too, that there's is it ever a safer choice, or is it always an equivalent safety choice?
I think the shop's focus is safety no matter what happens. They're looking for what's the least intrusive and the best option for the car. So I'm not sure I would put safety, because that's a concern regardless if it's repairable. Is there anybody that had any questions? Since I had one more thing I wanted to say. Did anybody have any questions?
So we have 1 minute. We have one question. Joel, you are live. Joel Feldman. If you can do a super fast question.
Well, I started out as a mechanical engineer. I've been in the body shop business for my whole life. I totally disagree with what the repair guys are saying about repairing plastics. We don't have time to get into it now, but they're not the same. They can't hold up the same. When the environment hits plastic that's been repaired, it's got different thicknesses. The material's a little different. It's not going to hold up the same. So I'll keep it short. That's my question, and then how do they respond?
That's good, and we don't have the time to respond. So Scott, I know you're probably right in the edge of your seat right now, but think that's the value.
I actually am.
Here's what I'd like to do, because that's a good question. I think that's great. We are going to continue the repair versus replace into May. If you're more than welcome to attend the May call, and we could have that discussion, because we're going to do exterior, but I don't mind doing that. I think if there's some value to that discussion, that would be a great thing to do. So, and Joel, you're more than welcome to reach out to me as well. We could visit there to help Hart and I plan for the next call. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The last thing I wanted to say, if you'd back up a couple slides, Barry, real quick, and that is AMI has reached out to us. Let's back up one more. AMI has reached out to us and has said that there's a possibility that AMI could offer some credits for attending this course. So we just wanted to throw that out, that if you have interest in earning AMI credits, you would attend the call, and then you go on their website and answer some questions, and you can possibly get some AMI points. And I don't know everything about that. We could certainly have AMI come and talk about it, but I just wanted to let you know that that's possible. So we'll look into that and give you some final information on the May call. Otherwise, I think we're out of time, Hart. I think we went over, so I'm all done.
We are out of time. Thank you, everyone. Our next call is on Thursday, May 10th at 11 a.m. Pacific. We will be continuing this conversation. We really look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully talk to you soon. Take care and have a great month.
Thank you.
Thank you.